Welcome, everyone. You're officially in the panel about effective use of data. And we just thought we'd go around and introduce ourselves. It looks like we're going to be a small group today. So if you were planning on just being a passive participant and listening, we're going to challenge your assumption about your role on the call, because we're going to ask you to weigh in a little bit. We think we can have a more intimate conversation and hopefully address your questions and concerns. So I thought I would start by introducing each of the panelists. So Doug, why don't you say hi first?
Hi, everyone from Chicago. I'm Doug Laney. I am Innovation Fellow with a consultancy called West Monroe Partners. I've been around about 20 years or so. Previously, I was an analyst, an advisor with Gartner, the IT advisory firm, the big IT advisory firm, and recently published a book on the topic of what I call Infonomics, the economics of information. How to manage and monetize and measure information as an actual corporate asset. So most of my work revolves around helping companies with their data and analytics strategies and identify new and innovative ways to leverage the vast array of data assets that are available to them.
Awesome. Thanks, Doug. Lou?
So my name is Lou Rosenberg. I'm from Los Angeles. I'm currently the executive director of Jewish National Fund in Los Angeles. And prior to working in the nonprofit world, I worked in the professional sports world with the LA Clippers in the NBA, Women's World Cup soccer, arena football, and did a lot of independent work for several major league and minor league baseball teams, as well as several NCAA universities on ticket driving promotions and capturing data.
Awesome. And I'm Dr. Kim Sebo Flores, and I'm the CEO of Algorithm, and we have an online product called Hello Insight, and been working for a lot of years in evaluating program outcomes for nonprofits, particularly in sports and arts, and helping them measure kind of what matters, but also helping to, I just did an article for the Stanford Innovation Review about bridging the evaluation gap. So bridging the gap between those who have access to really robust, rigorous evaluation data and those that don't, and the challenges that come from not having access to that kind of data. I think a lot of synergies with Doug's book around the value of having that kind of data from a marketing and fund development perspective. So I think we have three different kinds of experiences and some insights to bring to you all, but thought we'd weigh in with you all as well. Either if you could unmute yourself and say why you chose to come to this particular session, that would be great. Christine, I see you already unmuted yourself, so perhaps you can go first. Are you willing to speak up, or? Julia, or is it Philippe or Philip? Depending. Are either one of you willing to let us know why you came to this session? Or put it in the chat box.
Yeah, hi, I'm Julia. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can.
Yep. Hi, Julia.
I was the analytics intern this summer for Sports Philanthropy Network, and I'm majoring in statistics and data with a focus on data analytics. So I was just interested to see what you guys are going to talk about with data today.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right. Any particular questions around data and analytics? You know, career-oriented stuff or trends to hop on?
I'm actually involved with the group that does data analytics for the University of Illinois baseball team. So I think somebody mentioned that they'd done work with analytics in baseball, but really just any sports analytics. I'd be interested to hear what your experiences were, or just in business analytics in general.
Okay.
That's great. Christine, are you with us? I think maybe Christine's on, but either walked away or doesn't have voice. potential, which could have happened because Roy couldn't speak to us for a while either.
So Kim, let me address to Julia, who's with at your University of Illinois, correct?
Go Illini.
Yes.
So is this going to be, have you interned with the baseball team before? Or is this going to be your first season?
Yeah, I'm a junior now, and I've been doing it since my freshman year.
Okay, and what is the for the athletic department, their goals? I imagine they're trying to increase database capture. Is there certain things they're doing when people come the day of the game, or people who purchase tickets in advance?
The data that we do is on just the team and the batting and the pitching.
Okay.
We don't do data with the actual attendance or the fans or anything.
Okay.
Are there any recorded data sources like video? Are you doing any video analysis? I know, major league teams in most sports now do video capture and automated analysis.
Yeah, we do. So actually, the student manager records video, and then we have it hooked up to like an application that like we sync the pitch capture data with the video of the pitch in an application.
And are there any automated measurements like on the pitches?
Yeah, we have a flight scope radar.
Okay.
So we record like the spin, velocity, and then the batted ball data as well.
Okay.
So we have a new person joining us. Hi, Brian. Welcome. Can you unmute and say hi? Are you? I don't know. I'm pretty sure Christine can't say hello. So.
So I want to go back to Julia. Are there any goals for the team to use data more, or is that something that they're looking to you to innovate around?
Yeah, definitely. A couple years ago, they started with buying the equipment to track. They started with just the flight scope, and last year we got an Edgertronic camera, and we have Rapsodo, which is like for the pitching data as well. So they're definitely trying to get as much capture as possible and see what we can do with the analysis.
Okay, great.
Are a lot of the kinds of, I'm less familiar with the world of, I'm not that unfamiliar with it actually. I started my data life as a young statistician on my high school basketball team. So I think it's where I became a stats person. But it's not my area is not kind of the outcomes or the increases in improvement in ball and improvements in baseball or basketball or whatever the issues are, but are people looking for data to understand how young people are growing in terms of their skill improvement in these ways? Is that a big
definitely.
area? Yeah, is that a lot of the kinds of data, Doug, that you've grappled with and used before in some of the ways that you've talked about the outcomes or the benefits of sport programs with funders, donors, et cetera?
Yeah. One of the big trends in all areas of analytics is to leverage external data. So not just focus on your own data, but to gather data from other sources. And in the sports world, of course, that involves gathering streams of video and other content from your competitors, right? And and also looking at kind of macro and micro kinds of trends that can be incorporated into your own analytics and ultimately the performance of the team in various ways, the performance of the athletes, the performance of the team overall, and then many teams are very interested obviously in increasing ticket sales and fan engagement and all those kinds of things. So it's really two sides to the house. The performance of the team itself, and then the performance of the franchise from a revenue and fan engagement standpoint. Yeah. So in that regard, we leverage a lot of ideas from the retail industry, right? Because basically a sports complex is basically a big retail center. So,
Mhm.
and then when it comes to fan engagement, it's very similar to any kind of customer relationship management type initiative.
Awesome.
Similar kinds of data, similar kinds of analytics.
Yeah, yeah. Whereas
Yeah.
I've come at it mostly from the sports-based youth development perspective, where I'm working a lot
Mhm.
with the leagues, with the little leagues, and those folks who are really trying
Yeah.
to understand the impact of sport on young people's development,
Mhm.
which has been really interesting because honestly, we have a fairly large data set of young people, and we've been comparing sport-based, how kids in sport-based programs are doing compared to those in non-sport programs, just in terms of their social,
Mhm.
emotional development. And it turns out that young people who are involved in sports are doing exceptionally well, particularly boys, far more than other non-sport-based programs,
Mhm.
which has been a really interesting finding. But it's a different kind of database and with a different kind of user for it, right? Where a lot of
Mhm.
the folks who are consuming the data that I offer are the programs themselves in terms of improvement, but also donors and funders of the nonprofit.
Mhm. Another area, big area that I know we've talked about here today is in safety. And I know, in particular, I've consulted to the Australian Cricket League, and they're very concerned mostly about youth safety and keeping the youth, healthy up until the point where they, are becoming professionals. And so been putting a lot of sensors into the equipment to gather data, very much the same way that the NFL has put sensors in helmets to gather data on concussions and head injuries. But that's a big trend as well, is to um, put sensors into equipment to help their not only the health and safety, but also their performance. So one great example um, of basically de-informationalizing a product is the Babolat tennis racket that has a sensor in the handle, and then the sensor connects through Bluetooth to your iPhone or whatever, and can give you all sorts of input on your swing speed and direction and spin and all sorts of stuff. And then you can compare yourself match over match to see, looks like I was running around a lot of backhands. And so forth. And you can also compare yourself to professional players as well if you want to kind of emulate their games. So it's a cool little device, but it's not all about health, but also about performance.
It's interesting,
Yeah.
Doug, that you mentioned that, because this is going back 10 years when I was coaching
Mm-hmm.
AYSO soccer here,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't have the technology yet, but for my daughter's team,
Mm-hmm.
heading the ball was not allowed until a certain
Really?
age,
Okay.
because, and there are studies on this,
Mm-hmm.
that a girl's brain development, especially in the frontal lobe where you head the ball, is different from that of a boy.
Really?
And girl soccer players tend to suffer more concussions than boys.
Yeah. And it would have been more kind of expensive or disruptive to change the ball to a lighter ball or something?
I think they were using a lighter ball.
Yeah.
They weren't using what I would call like a NCAA level ball
Mm-hmm.
or a professional, but it was still, when you're dealing with young girls and boys in, like, let's say the 9 to 13 level, heading was disallowed.
Yeah. Well,
because the studies were showing that the head injuries were drastic as they got older.
Yeah, I mean, there's other cool uses of analytics as well, like the NFL implemented a system some years ago to pull together 20,000 variables and 50,000 constraints to analyze and optimize scheduling. Apparently, there's 7,000 different game options for scheduling, and they wanted to optimize the scheduling for TV ratings and revenue and so forth. And whereas it used to take weeks and weeks and weeks to optimize the schedule, the system now can produce a schedule in under 24 hours.
Back in the day when I was working for the Clippers, we used to submit our home. It was all by hand.
Yeah.
Go through literally have a large, like 8.5 by 11 calendar, flip it over and say, we're requesting home dates, and here's the dates we want. I wish we had an automated system that would make it so much easier. And then the technology today, where when you're watching a sporting event, and if you're watching an NBA game, and they say, "Oh, LeBron James is running 9.4 miles in this game so far."
Right, right.
That's pretty cool stuff.
Or now the percentages that a player was going to make that play, right? The odds that
Right.
they make a certain play. And I think they get a lot of that from systems like, if you're familiar, Lou, if you ever worked with the Field FX system from Sports Vision, Sport Vision, right?
No.
So they collect, last I checked, over 2.5 million data points per game in baseball stadiums,
Wow.
including the batter stances, the swing speed, the plane of the swing, the pitch speed curve, location, trajectory, even the fielder reaction time, base runner reaction and speed. So they're able to capture, back in the day, it was really mostly about offensive statistics were the ones that were easy to capture. And
Right.
so now they're able to capture as many defensive related statistics as before.
That's why I wanted to ask Julia.
Yeah.
Julia, with Illinois baseball, is that the type of technology you have, or are you basically just is it more offensive oriented?
It's pretty at this point. We have the machine. It tracks like the pitch, like the spin, the release point, and like the velocity, and then on the batted ball, like the point of contact through the strike, or just through the strike zone, point of contact, and then like where it lands in the field. But yeah, we don't have like the sensors or capabilities that like tracks the defensive positioning at this point.
Yeah, it takes a lot of cameras, throughout a stadium to do that. But they can track things like which fielders get the best jump on a ball, which ones take the right trajectory, who are the smartest runners, and so forth. It's really, totally changing the economics of baseball.
And then Julia, how is the statistics that you're preparing, how are they presented to each player? Are they given like on a disc that they go and study to scout for the upcoming games, or how does that process work?
So we actually give the reports and everything to the coaches. They like really control what they want the players to see. But we've built Shiny applications where we import all of the data, and then we have like the code ready to run these like reports and visualizations of like the strike zones or the fields or different charts. And then they can be like filtered. And then that also connects to like the video app. So I'm not exactly sure what the coaches like give access to the players. I know we have like some of the pages locked like for the coaches to see like all the stats, because they don't necessarily want the players to be like breaking down all of this stuff, but they do give them access so they can like search up specific video.
Nice.
You find that data is used to determine who like the starters are, or what the lineup is, based on whether they're facing a fastball versus a more of a curveball kind of pitcher?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Laney and Eugene, I just wanted to check in with you all. I know you just joined, and one of the questions we have is, what was your interest in data utilization when you plugged into this session, so that we can get into dialogue with you and address any questions you might have. So.
I am from the background of geographic information systems, and I've done a massive amount of work in gridding out both football and baseball stadiums, taking all of the data from previous years with a team. And basically, if you want to consider an NFL team, the opponent lines up, you line up, and being able to recognize what they're doing and exactly what play they're going to be. And we've advised NFL teams as well as Major League Baseball teams on using that type of data. It's pretty advanced stuff. It's pretty costly, but thankfully, two of my clients have multiple teams using it. So I wandered in here because I wanted to see what you were talking about.
So
that's where my interest is.
So you mentioned you're involved in GIS, but then you gave an example that isn't exactly GIS. How are you using GIS data?
It's all GIS. Every grid of location of a field, whether it be really whatever, but not really useful in the NBA, but take a football stadium. It's 100 yards by whatever the width is, what it's at 30 or 40. Grid it just like you would an airplane crash. Figure out where people are, where they're lining up, where the ball's going under certain circumstances, and you can pretty much predict exactly what's going to happen. And thankfully, because I'm a data guy, I can.
Mhm.
And Roy's here listening, thinking, "Oh God, he wandered into the session."
Cool. Yeah.
But yes, it's all. If you've heard of GIS, it's all location to me, no
Okay.
matter what I'm.
You must be a geographer.
I was a city planner until I realized I wanted to make a living, and then I combined data and business and never looked back.
Mhm.
But yes, I
Cool.
cannot get me lost. People call me from all over the world for directions.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Doug, you were going to say something. I think I cut you
No, I
off
have
right
just more
before
examples to share that might be
Yeah.
interesting. Like one is with the worked with the Florida Panthers, and they were interested in obviously driving ticket sales, and so they saw data-driven marketing as a real opportunity to increase their fan base and sell more tickets and drive sponsorship revenue. So they combined all their fan data coming in from various sources, such as their customer relationship management system, social media, ticketing, et cetera, to get kind of this 360-degree view of their fans. They also used the platform that they had called Umble, I think it's called, to collect first-party data, including their social brand affinities, behaviors, demographics, and analyze it for patterns. And so one of the results was that they've been able to do more precise fan segmentation, which resulted in really highly targeted campaign emails. And so they found that each of the emails, once they were able to target them properly, they're able to drive an additional almost $9 of ticket revenue per email. So not everybody's going to respond to an email, but on average, each email, which costs them pennies, right, drove an average of $9 additional in ticket sales. So overall, the team felt that they calculated that they achieved over a 12x return on investment from just their overall data management platform. So I'm a big fan of companies thinking about how to create like a data warehouse or a data lake that is self-funding, and that's a great example of that, one that actually pays for itself. It's companies and businesses and sports teams need to get away from doing more hindsight-oriented analytics to doing more foresight-oriented analytics. They spend a lot of companies still spend a lot of time building pretty pie charts and bouncy bar charts and dashing dashboards. And I've collected 500 examples, over 500 examples of how organizations are using data and analytics in innovative ways. And almost none of them have anything to do with this hindsight-oriented, simple analytics. And, it's more about doing more diagnostic and predictive and prescriptive kinds of analytics. So that's our kind of recommendation, to get away from doing that hindsight-oriented stuff too much.
Yeah, we do the same in our platform. We measure kind of both what, and for folks who've just joined, we are really taking the focus for the nonprofit sports organization, sports-based youth development organization. But similarly, Doug, we kind of take a perspective of just knowing how young people are doing in terms of their social emotional development on the field isn't enough, because if we're going to use the data, we need to know what it is that we could be doing better. So we leverage the thousands of people who, hundreds of thousands of young people who are in our data set to be able to say, hey, for a group of young people like this group of young people, here's what's worked in the past. We can recommend right from the very beginning, first day of programming, like for this kind of young person, here's what you could be doing to really engage them. And for example, one of this funny statistic is that a lot of the young people who come into sports programs have no interest in the sport. They're joining because they want to be part of a team. They want to be part of something, right? And so, the question there is, right, if the whole focus then is on engaging the young person in doing better in the sport, you're probably going to fail them, right? Or you're not going to get them where they want. But where they want to be as part of that team, want to find their role in the team, which might be as the team statistician, which might be as the manager, which might be in the business somewhere, but helping them to immediately know where young people are when they enter these kinds of programs, so they can get them the right set of supports rather than, so we use predictive prescriptives. We kind of use a lot of AI data real-time data recommendations that operate in our platform so that people can use the data. Because so often, especially in outcome data, because in the nonprofit element of this work, right, the buyer, the purchaser is the foundation, not the end user, right? So we have this proxy buyer. So we're often using data just to sell our program to the funder who's going to support the work, right? But a lot of times that frontline coach isn't in the equation. They're not getting data about what they could be doing better, how they could be improving their coaching strategy for that young person. So I agree with you 100% about we need to move past just having data to finding ways that make it more forward thinking and how can we use it to improve immediately.
Yeah. And a lot of organizations have a hard time ideating around what to do with all this data that they have, not only internally, but data that they can gather from social media or harvest from websites or get from IoT devices or pull in from open data sources or from partners and suppliers and others. So it's very difficult to ideate. One, it's difficult to curate all this data. You know, most organizations have an entire department dedicated to purchasing, office supplies, right? But don't have a single person dedicated to procuring data supplies. And I think that's a big mistake that a lot of organizations have. But then what do you do with all this data? And it involves, a degree of R&D, research and development activities, a focused effort to ideate around what's the art of the possible with this data. What could we do with it? And especially in sports organizations, I think there's a lot of opportunity to borrow from other industries. All right. No, don't just look to your own industry for what's going on, but look to what's happening in retail or manufacturing or banking or insurance or others to see how other organizations and other industries are innovating with data and how you can bring those ideas perhaps into your own domain. So that's something that I work with organizations on. I run data monetization or information innovation workshops for them.
With JNF, and we have over 850,000 people in our database, we kind of focused in on a couple of areas that we found very important. The one most important area that we try to verify is someone's birth date. Because it's amazing by sending either an email or a phone call, how much a happy birthday message goes with that donor type relationship.
Cool.
There's kind of like four key areas. We want to know their birth date, what their job is, what their job title is, what denomination of religion are they? Are they Reformed, Conservative, Orthodox, not Jewish? That's the key information for us. And then during the course of the year, for us to stay in contact with our donors, 4 to 6, 7 times a year, and we use Salesforce for that. So Salesforce is able to generate reports for this however we wish to pull it. And it's become a huge success. I think for JNF, it's become huge in our success of getting to the campaign dollars we are now generating. And Doug, I just wanted to ask you one other question, what you had mentioned before. What is considered an above average rate for email open? What's the percentage?
Oh, for opening?
Yeah.
I don't know the details on that. I know it's pretty low. When we talk to clients, they think, oh, we're going to get like a 25% hit rate. No, you're not. You're going to get like a 2% hit rate. Maybe 2% will open. Maybe a percentage of them will actually click. But it's difficult.
If I may.
Eugene, yeah, go ahead.
I put a question up, but Lou, on the birthday thing, have you tried buying data from US Data on the people that you're targeting? They actually have methods of figuring out who is Jewish, and oddly enough, once they figure out who is Jewish, they have their birth date. So I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina. We wanted to find all of the Jews in the Triangle some years ago. I bought data from Info USA with whom I had a relationship, and I was able to find 13,000 Jewish households out of the 20,000 they had. And I can tell you, I have the birth dates of all those people because it came along with it. Now in LA, it might be a little harder.
Yeah, Eugene, that's a good question. So the way we're set up at JNF, and I'm in Los Angeles, our headquarters are in New York, and that's where our marketing department is based. I just don't have enough time in the day to start figuring out what type of list to buy. I kind of control what happens in my market. As an example, when we hold an event, and we have an event we do in normal times where we have 1,000 people show up. Our goal is to have each and every person verify their data on the pre-printed form we've already printed out. Because people move, people change jobs, they change their phone numbers, and some people sign up, we don't have any information. So, that's, we try to do it on a person-to-person level to confirm our data and capture data.
But what about gathering new, data on new people or
Yeah,
identifying new?
It blows me away because I don't know. I gotta be honest with you. I'm not sure where we get our data because there's sometimes I'll go in and I'll meet someone who has no giving history to JNF and they're in Salesforce.
Yeah.
You've brought your data from one of those two sources. One is called US Data, one is called Info USA. They are where if you have a shopper's card, that's where all your data lands. Unfortunately for you folks, I was dealing with big data 20 years ago and found these sources. And now there's, in 10 minutes, I can give you your life history, including everything you've ever bought because of those shopper's cards. And of course, your social security number.
Great.
So I asked, I'm the last person you want to meet in a dark alley. So I actually asked the question, and it was aimed at the people working a little bit perhaps in this sports industry. Are teams, whether they be college level Big Five or professional, using data to figure out where to put people in the stadiums to make the most noise and have the most effect, since they can only have whatever it is, 7 to 10%?
You're talking about during COVID? You're talking about for like the COVID
during COVID? No, I haven't
because
heard
of
of anything
COVID,
like that.
7 to 10% in the stadium. There's got to be places in a stadium which are better or worse to put people.
Doesn't matter. They can pipe in noise. It doesn't really matter where the people are.
Oh, they're allowed to, even with the people there.
Yeah.
Yes. That's what the home field advantage or home court advantage is going to be. You get to pipe in your own music.
So, yeah, I wanted to go back to something, Lou, you were talking about, identifying people's birthdays and reaching out to them, but there are many other kinds of milestones that people have. I wonder how many of those you're actually plugging into. Like, do you know the relationships between parents and children so that you know when, like, one of the parents dies and you can reach out to the child on the yard side of the anniversary of the death of the parent or something like that. Those are all days,
if our team, and this is like, as Rick will say, if our team is doing our job, there's Salesforce, there's a relationship tool you can build. So even though someone may not even be a donor, let's say the parent is a donor, but the young adult is not, I can still make that link. And then we also have, I think it's part of the professional to know, oh, this person's celebrating a milestone anniversary, and then we send out, a special certificate or whatever is needed during that time. That's a great point. Yeah, there's a relationship tool which has been really good.
I'm always looking for a reason to plant a tree, so
right,
or 2 or 3.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I was talking to well, I'll tell you a story. I moved. This is about identifying these life cycle events. We moved a number of years ago. I bank with one of the largest banks in the world through a series of acquisitions. And when we moved, you put your house, you put your house up for sale. It goes into the MLS database. It's basically public, knowledge. Now everybody reaches out to you, like the fly-by-night mortgage companies and the moving companies and the box companies and the painters and the landscapers. Everybody starts reaching out to you. The only company that didn't reach out to us was our own bank. Like, what an incredible missed opportunity from like the largest bank in the world to say, hey, can we offer you a mortgage, a home equity line? Can we introduce you to your new branch? Can we help you move the stuff in your safe deposit box? Can we print you new checks? On and on. A total missed opportunity. When is the number one time that somebody's going to change, banks is when there's a life event like that. They move or, get married or divorced or something like that. But I thought, how stupid simple would it have been for them to hire high school programmer, give them a can of Red Bull and say, match the MLS database to our customer list on a nightly basis and spit out who's moving. It's stupid, simple stuff that the companies are overlooking when it comes to these, life milestone events that are really easy to tap into.
Great. Kim,
Hey, Eugene, could you Could you mute yourself just while, just for a minute, just when you're talking, unmute, but I think we're hearing feedback from you.
From
Yeah, Lou?
Eugene, I think we'll get it
Yeah,
from
from Eugene.
I've got a question. Like how big is your database that you're managing? I'm just curious. Like, do you ever feel like sometimes you're sending out too frequency of a correspondence?
So I mean, because the way that we work, right? So we're a software as a solution, so we're a membership-based organization, right? And so people sign up with us, and they have a year membership. When they sign up, we generally do onboarding with them. We have very regular community meetings where we're sharing like what are the latest findings. We'll have a big one coming out about our latest findings for sports organizations. We just had one on youth organizing, and so people will come to learn more. We often highlight organizations who are doing exceptional work. So we have pretty regular community kind of events, and we have monthly newsletters. So in our own database, we're meeting and talking to our members pretty much monthly at least. We could get better on birthdays and other events, though, for sure.
monthly is a pretty good cadence, I would think.
Yeah. We don't want to annoy them completely, but
especially if there's new content, new and interesting content. You've got to it can't be just an ask. It has to be some new and interesting content. Here's something that's happening that's relevant to you.
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of, because we're able to lift up nonprofits who are doing exceptional work, which they always really like. So we're able to, tap into the data set and saying like, here's a group who's doing really great coaching work, and we can spotlight them for that month, and we do a whole lot of that kind of work. So
I sometimes worry that and Doug, maybe you can answer this because I think you get our emails. Do we send out too many emails? I often wonder about that. And does it affect our open rate from our donors or even from prospects?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to check. I have emails that go to different places. So some of them are the higher priority ones. Others are not.
Yeah. We've had some people kind of coming in and out now, but we're having a pretty informal conversation. I've been trying to keep messaging folks as they're coming in on the right, privately, so that everybody's not getting them. But if anybody has questions, we're trying to get underneath your questions around using data and data use. So as Mo, I think you're the latest that just joined in. If you have questions that you might want to ask the panel, either pop yourself off mute or chat us in the chat box, and we're happy to answer. Eugene or Julia, how are we doing? Are we addressing some of the questions that you came into the room with, or do you have others?
Yeah, definitely. It's just interesting to hear about everything that you guys have been talking about, because I definitely have a very limited experience in getting exposed to just any types of like real world data outside of like the classic data sets in my classes that we've been doing analysis on. So yeah, you guys, everything's been interesting.
So I always say to students that you should be grateful for the data set that you have now, because you'll never have another one that looks like it. In graduate school, you always have this wonderful data set with no missing data and no problems, and everything's lined up. And then you spend the rest of your life feeling like, do I have to spend all these hours cleaning this data? You could have amazing amount of time cleaning data.
But we spent at the beginning of COVID, that was like the #1 mandate. It's like, okay, it's going to be hard to ask people for money right now. Go through all your accounts and make sure the data is accurate. Update it. So we spent a lot of manpower and hours in those first couple of months, like making sure our data. It's even Salesforce has a tool where it could track, what percentage you're at of your accounts that are 100% complete.
Yeah, so there are all sorts of different data quality measurements that I recommend to clients. You mentioned accuracy, the completeness of data, the timeliness of data, even the scarcity, like how unique is it to you versus to other, perhaps competitive organizations. the clarity, the precision, the grain of the data. They're all different measures of data quality. And I think it's difficult to for any organization to focus their efforts or get budget for data management or data cleansing if they don't know the value of the data itself. And so some of the work that I've been doing is helping organizations quantify the value of their data, like as if it were a balance sheet asset, which
Wow.
is not, because current accounting regulations don't allow data to be valued on the balance sheet, even though it meets all the criteria. But anyway, so I'm helping companies measure the value of their data to help them focus their data management and data and analytics efforts.
I mean, it comes down to, it's an old phrase, but if I got hit by the proverbial bus tonight, someone else could step in and manage my accounts, and all the notes on the people should be there, all my previous
Could be
calls,
there, yeah.
emails, and just taking over.
Right. And then I say, the old adage is you can't manage what you don't measure. And if organizations aren't measuring their data in any way, its value contribution, its business relevancy, its cost, its potential market value, its impact on key performance indicators, then you're really in a poor position to manage it well. And if you're not managing your data well, then you're in a poor position to monetize or to generate value from it. And so for many companies, this tends to be quite a vicious cycle of not measuring their data. Therefore, they're not managing it well. Therefore, they're not monetizing it as well as they could. And so the idea behind this Infonomics concept that I've been writing about and speaking about and researching is to kind of, like we say here in Chicago, reverse the curse, right? We Cub fans talk about reversing the curse. And so that's kind of how that all fits together.
Yeah, that's really, it's so interesting to hear about it in the business side of it too, and the nonprofit side. If there's been such a striking difference in the growth patterns of nonprofit organizations who access and leverage evaluation data versus those that don't. And there's a massive gap, economic gap in the size of the organizations that have access and use evaluation. And we have an access issue in the nonprofit sector because what happens is that most people don't have the resources for evaluation, and funders don't fund evaluation, but they all want evaluation, and they won't fund without evaluation, but they won't necessarily give you a line item budget for it, right? So you have to figure out how to gather that out of your general operating support, but you have to value it enough to do so, right? And be able to make it meaningful to you and to your staff. And so, but the last economic downturn, there was such a divide. I thought evaluation would go under. At the time, the American Evaluation Institute was about we were less than 10,000. I'd say we were about 100 and some odd thousand now. And that upshot happened right after the economic downturn, because most funders didn't want to fund you if they didn't know that you had a quality program that was making a difference. And so the smaller nonprofits that didn't have access to, a six-figure amount of money for a PhD to walk in and measure their outcomes, didn't do it. And many folded, merged, or shrank. And that trend is happening again as we speak, because we're in COVID and the same kind of crisis, the same kind of fiscal crisis is hitting the nonprofits. So I think it's the exact same. If you're not really valuing data and finding a way to use data effectively to drive your programming, your sales, your marketing, et cetera, there's just going to be a massive gap economically.
Yeah, I mean, from the sports end, when I had my career in sports, you work for an NBA team like the Clippers, and we had all the information on our season ticket holders. We had all the information on our small game package holders, but the person who is coming to an individual game, you'll get that information. So you've got to be creative. How do you get it? You create the in-arena contest to sign in for. You can get the list from the ticket master, and then the secondary ticket market came into play. So that individual buyer who's coming to a sporting event became extremely important to teams, because they're coming to sample your product. Now, can you turn that individual buyer into a 6-game package? Can you move them into a half season, eventually a season ticket? And teams are spending a lot of money on that.
How are they capturing the data? Is it mostly through
I mean, look, I've been out of that industry for a while, and I think through technology now, you've got ways of in-arena text contests where you you know, you text your number and you could hit the stop to opt out, obviously through email communication now. But you know, back in the day, it was as simple as getting a list from Ticketmaster of people who purchased an individual game ticket.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you see this person's purchased 7 or 8 games throughout the year, and they're spending full price on the tickets plus service fees, and you could offer them a package where they could save, you know, some money. That's a key pitch. But for teams, the individual person who comes to their venue to see their team play is very valuable, because it's like they're sampling the product. It's no different than a car dealership who will spend, you know, thousands of dollars to drive traffic to their dealership. You know, they get that one customer in. If they could close 1 out of whatever, you know, 10, 25 people, they've more than paid for their advertising.
Yeah, makes good sense.
It's all, you know, get the names and get the pertinent information and keeping in contact with them. That's the name of the game.
Yeah. We have about 10 minutes left. So again, just gonna ask our three wonderful, intrepid participants if they have questions or thoughts or things that they've been grappling with data and data use in sports. See, Mo's unmuted but not talking yet. Mo, if you're talking, we can't hear you, and happy to chat you if there is something wrong with your mic. If not, we may, if Lou and Doug, if we...
I actually have to go join the next, I have to join the next session.
I know you do. I know Doug, Lou has to run to the next session. I'm also happy to give everybody back 8 minutes of their life for a quick break between sessions, if that's good with everybody. But Doug, do you have anything else to close with?
No, thanks. Anybody can reach out to us, connect with me over LinkedIn is the easiest way. And if you have any other questions. And I was going to tell Julia, I'm actually teaching a course at the Geese Business School on Infonomics, if you're at all interested.
All right. Well, it was wonderful doing
That's
this.
interesting. I'll check that out.
Sure.
Well, thank you, Doug. It was nice meeting you. Kim, thank you.
Meeting you all. Thanks, everyone.
Nice meeting you all.
Take care. Have a good evening.
Okay. Bye-bye.